Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of our Battlefield Special Report. It's day 942 of the Ukraine war, and the Russian military's bizarre antics just keep coming. Putin's Sarmat missile didn't even get a chance to scare the West before it blew itself up right in its own silo. The test site turned into a 65 crater in diameter in an instant. This kind of operation is so absurd that even comedians couldn't make it up. Putin's Sarmat blows up, a joke. According to Austin expert Metamarcy on Platform X, firm satellite monitoring showed two abnormal heat sources near the launch site, suggesting there were two explosions or fires. An American Cobra Ball reconnaissance plane had just done a loop around the Arctic before returning directly to its base at Offutt Air Force Base, home of the U.S. Strategic Air Command. After that, no more Cobra Ball planes were sent for surveillance. Normally, they would have dispatched several to observe. It seems the U.S. had already predicted that Russia's missile wouldn't even make it past the fueling stage and that self-destruction was inevitable, and never reaching the launch phase. This is chilling when you think about it. The American plane was within a few hundred kilometers of the Russian launch site, which takes 4 or 5 hours to reach. That means the U.S. knew 4 or 5 hours in advance that the Sarmat was about to be fueled. What a level of intelligence! And it seems the U.S. also anticipated that problems would occur during fueling, leading to the missile's self-destruction. Satellite images show 4 fire trucks at the scene fighting the blaze. Not only was the launch site destroyed, but the nearby forest was also damaged. It's worth noting that the Sarmat missile's only successful test was on April 20th, 2022, and this latest one on the 22nd marks the 4th total failure. Insider information suggests that the missile is far from mature and requires at least dozens of tests to ensure reliability. But Russia, eager to show off its muscle, skipped all the steps and rushed the Sarmat into service. Speaking of nuclear weapons, Russia's warhead count seems intimidating: 6,255 warheads, more than the US, UK, and France combined. But how many are actually usable? Russia's nuclear arsenal is vast but outdated, with highly unstable performance and a shockingly high failure rate during test launches. In 2022, Elon Musk even claimed he could make Russia's nuclear weapons miss their targets, and took the opportunity to mock Putin, although Musk might have been exaggerating. It shows his disdain for Russia's nuclear capabilities. Even if Russia could actually launch its nuclear weapons, they'd still face other countries' defense systems. The U.S. has the strongest defense network: sea-based SEM-23, land-based PIM-3, Taj-Ingwai, and B-Bai. Even Europe has many similar systems. This is one reason why Russia doesn't dare to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine. Imagine without the deterrence from the US and Europe, Russia would have been waving its nuclear weapons around long ago. In 2022, Russia threatened to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine, but under strong warnings from the US, UK, and France, they had to back down. Nuclear weapons in the hands of such a country are indeed a massive threat to global peace. What's even more ridiculous is that on September 19th, Russian State Duma Chairman Vyacheslav Volodin boasted that the Sarmat missile could hit Strasbourg, France, in 3 minutes. Unfortunately, he forgot to ensure the missile wouldn't blow up in his own backyard first. Recently, Russia's military budget is only about $50 to $60 billion. Yet, they have to maintain more nuclear warheads and delivery vehicles than the US. This limited budget also has to cover conventional military forces. Meanwhile, Russian generals are building villas in places like Sochi, hiding substantial deposits abroad, and sending their kids to study in the West. One can't help but wonder how much of Russia's military budget actually goes into the military and how much ends up in the generals' pockets. So, when Putin thinks about pulling out the nuclear weapons, the generals are the first to object. Why? They know the nukes are untouchable. Using them would expose the truth. The funds meant for nuclear weapons have turned into villas in Sochi and foreign bank accounts. So it's best if the nukes conveniently malfunction, everyone saves face, and especially if a massive explosion levels everything, the generals can land safely. Nuclear warheads won't detonate in a fire. As long as their silos are burned out, the world becomes a more peaceful place. That's not bad at all. Hezbollah's rockets made a U-turn. Next up, let's look at some recent laugh-out-loud stories from battlefields around the globe. First off, Hezbollah over in Lebanon has outdone themselves. Reports say that the rockets they fired at Asriel actually made a U-turn and came back to hit them. Things were normal. The first couple of days, they fired over 100 heavy rockets at Israel. But on the third day, rockets from the same batch started falling back onto their own launch sites. Lebanon must be tearing their hair out. They just had a massive ammo depot weighing between 500 to 1,000 tons flattened by Israel. Now, their remaining assets are hitting themselves. They're really out of options. Hezbollah tried using pagers to communicate, thinking they couldn't be tracked, but Israel tampered with them, The pagers exploded as soon as they beeped, blinding 2,800 key personnel and even injuring their reproductive organs. With pagers no longer safe, they switched to walkie-talkies. But Israel was one step ahead, having already meddled with those too. Hezbollah's leaders were once again blown to new heights, and several hundred key members couldn't withstand the blow. Desperate, Hezbollah decided to go old school and rely on shouting to communicate. But as soon as their leaders gathered, Israeli airstrikes came in, sending 14 top officials to the afterlife in one go. Pagers exploding, walkie-talkies exploding, airstrikes the triple whammy wiped out Hezbollah's leadership. Iran's little brother has been thoroughly crippled this time. It'll take a while for them to recover. This triple blow will probably be written into military textbooks as a classic case study. Turning our attention to the Kursk battlefield, the Russian army is no match for Ukrainian forces in mobile warfare. The Russians' trench defense only makes them sitting ducks for endless drone attacks and hellfire robotic dogs. Throwing masses of troops no longer works. Whether frontline cannon fodder or mid-level commanders, they're all falling victim to drones. Russian Colonel Alexander Kulin, commander of the 234th Regiment of the 76th Airborne Division, was killed by a Ukrainian Fiv drone in Kursk previously. On August 29th, Kulin survived a drone attack that killed his deputy. But between September 12th and 14th, his luck ran out and he was taken out by a Ukrainian drone. Ukrainian forces have been continuously striking Russian logistics warehouses and transport routes in Kursk in response. The Russian military did something quite bizarre. Over the past 2 days, they've used 58 air defense missiles to carry out 28 airstrikes on their own territory. Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. The fighting in the Pokrovsk direction has been intense. The Russian army has revived the classic Vietnam-era night-crawling tactics, launching random attacks on Ukrainian positions 24/7. Their enthusiasm for battle is truly astonishing. But the Ukrainians aren't sitting idle, they're deploying drones with thermal imaging. However, with so many Russian troops, even the drone's firepower is feeling insufficient. Ukrainian drone operators are working around the clock, forcing the Ukrainian army to increase personnel, adding 1,000 drone operators to each brigade. The brigade-level units are reverting to the standard size of 5,000 troops, and may need to be further strengthened to 6,000 or even 7,500 to face high-intensity combat. Modern warfare is all about manpower and equipment. Everyone's upping their game. Zelensky's hyper-drama at the UN. Lastly, let's talk about Ukrainian President Zelensky's new victory plan. On the 22nd, Zelensky arrived in New York before he even set foot on the ground. He released a hard-hitting evening speech from the plane. He said, "This fall is a decisive moment for the future of the war. We need to fight this battle with our partners and strive for victory, a true, full, and just victory." How's that for inspiring? He continued calmly, "Right now, global leaders are shaping their legacies. In the coming days, I'll meet with leaders from the Global South, the G7 Europe, and heads of international organizations to see who can continue helping us stabilize the situation." Then he shifted gears. "Of course, we also have key meetings with U.S. representatives." What's key? True peace and a genuine victory. Ukraine's victory means upholding international law. That's what we need. Time to highlight the schedule. Monday, the 23rd, Zelensky will speak at the Future Summit at the UN headquarters. Tuesday, the 24th, he'll attend a special UN Security Council meeting on Ukraine. Wednesday, the 25th, he'll deliver a speech at the UN General Assembly's General Debate. In the coming days, let's watch how Zelensky takes the international stage by storm, putting the Ukraine issue back in the global spotlight. It's worth noting that the war has lasted 2.5 years, and over 70% of Ukrainians remain firmly opposed to surrender, showing unprecedented national unity with little risk of internal strife. Russia is experiencing a similar situation, but under different conditions. Previously, Russian territory hadn't been attacked. Now, with issues cropping up in Kursk, domestic morale is visibly wavering, to the point where the Russian Defense Ministry has to issue statements emphasizing that negative information about Kursk must not be disseminated. The problems in Kursk have also led to Russian losses in the Kharkiv offensive. Forget about Kiev, they couldn't even take Kharkiv, a city close to the Russian border. So relying solely on progress in Pokrovsk won't make the Ukrainians surrender. In fact, since the Pokrovsk offensive began, Russian casualty rates have significantly increased. Meanwhile, Ukraine's military capabilities have noticeably improved over the past 2 years of aid, reducing Ukrainian fatalities. Some think that if the West stops aiding Ukraine, Russia will win. But do Western powers ever do business at a loss? Even if Russia wins over Ukraine, it would just be another winter war, gaining territory but losing everything else. Moreover, since all Eastern European neighbors except Belarus are now NATO members, Russia has no room for expansion. Ideally, Russia loses this war and falls into deep division. Otherwise, who knows which country they'll invade next. All right, that's all for now. Let's wait and see how Zelensky implements his victory plan on the international stage. Mr. Putin, are you ready to take the challenge? That's all for today's special report. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to stay updated with our coverage. And remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.